Hello, everyone, and I hope you're all doing well. My name is Tanner Dajne, and I'm the host of Self-Sabotage Solutions. On this podcast, it's my opportunity and my pleasure to be able to share everything I know about self-sabotage so that you can overcome self-sabotage in your life. And today I want to talk to you about something that has always been on my mind, even before I knew a lot of this information, and always struck me as odd, was the whole genes conversation, talking about how, you know, that your genes define you, that if your parents had certain kind of genes, you'd be stuck with cancer, with obesity, with depression, with higher chance of heart attack, with diabetes, with alcoholism, all these things, and that you had nothing to do it to really change. Like, sure, maybe some of your actions could slightly alter it, but at the end of the day, you still had those genes, and it was really an idea that created like a victim mentality for a lot of people. It's a big form of self sabotage. And there's been some recent developments that I want to talk about because they are so empowering, and they really blow the whole lid off this the idea that your genes define you. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Is that belief that you know genes define your life, genes define your health, and all of that. Um, and we're going to be talking about why it's not necessarily the case that they do define you. They can if you let them. So we'll talk more about this in a second. But really, where did this belief come from? Right. Well, it's a mainstream narrative, meaning that most scientists, most people believe that this is how it is. That your genes actually define exactly who you are. And really, there's no way you can change this, right? Because it's just what you were born with. So if your parents had a higher chance of cancer, if your family had higher cancer, that means you have a higher risk of cancer. If your parents had obesity, it means you have a higher chance of obesity. If your parents had depression, it means you have a higher chance of depression. And like, heart attack, diabetes, alcoholism, all those things um, is what they said would be the case, and there was no real talks about how you could really change that. But these things are obviously handed down from generation to generation because we've seen it. We've seen it with our own eyes. People have experienced this. So, are we powerless to this, or do we have actual ability to break that chain of handing down generations of trauma and disease and ill health and depression and alcoholism and all these things, right? Are we powerless to it, or do we have an ability to actually change it? Do we have ability to power ourselves up and change our lives and take back our power? Um, I want you to think about what other things do we actually hand down from generation to generation, right? We don't just hand down genes from generation to generation. Usually we hand down things that we do in our everyday life. We hand down our habits. We hand down our beliefs. We hand down our eating styles and ways of living. And so oftentimes, and the reason why this happens is because humans are just natural imitative learners. And so when kids are between the ages of 1 and 7, their brains are in a hyperactive state, in a theta brainwave state, which means that they are absorbing everything that they're seeing. They are trying to learn how to fit in with society, with their tribe, which is their family, and society in a way. They are trying to learn what the best thing is to do so they can fit in and be part of the tribe, be part of society, so that they won't be outcasted, so they won't be ridiculed, so they won't be, attacked. And that's the way this part of their mind, that's super hyperactive while they are kids, works. And for many of us, those those things that this part of our mind learns, those, what I like to call them programs, but really they're just beliefs, their habits, their ways of acting. Um, we take those things into our adulthood, and we often continue to mimic those things that our parents did, that we saw teachers do, that we saw society do, um, much farther into our life. And most of those things come from between the ages of 1 and 7. And so we are actually handing down. That's why it's so important. Well, that's why I always talk about this point, is to address your self-sabotage now so that your kids don't have to address it, farther down the line. And if you can be the chain breaker now, if you can break that chain of that trauma, of that self-sabotage, of that disease, or ill health or negative thinking mentality, if you can break that now for your future generations, for your kids, for their kids, then that is one of the most amazing things that you can do. And the amazing thing is that you can do it. You are not subject to your genes. We are not subject to our genes. That is just a fallacy that we've been told for so long, even though it's been there's been evidence contrary to the fact that our genes control our life for a long time. It's just that our science has gotten so like tunnel visioned down one road, that they've ignored it for so long. So we'll talk more about that. And I learned a lot of this information from an amazing cell biologist, Dr. Bruce Lipton. He's actually one of the major pioneers of a form of cell biology called epigenetics. And epigenetics is really, in layman's terms, like the study of how environmental factors, like food and like where you live and like the things that you're doing in life, the things you're putting on your bodies, toxins, all those things, and beliefs can alter the genes in our body, and they can switch them on or off without changing the actual DNA sequence. So what that means is, yes, we may be born with certain genes. You may have some genes that are more disposed to cancer, to those kinds of things. But what it means is that our environment, our beliefs can actually switch those ones off and switch on different genes, meaning that we are not stuck down that route of being unhealthy, down that route of getting cancer, down that route of being obese, down that route of being more inclined to have depression or a heart attack or diabetes or alcoholism. And we're not stuck down that route because of genes alone. We actually have many more factors at play, and a lot of those are actually within our control. Maybe not as children, but once we become adults, we have the ability to change that. And that's the most amazing thing, because it allows us to get out of that victim mentality and pull back our power. Essentially, we can take back our power and start to become who we want to be. We can start to take back our future, and we can mold that to the way that we want. And I love the idea about how it's programmable, because that's why I always talk about the subconscious mind, because it's programmable as well. So the cell membrane, and here's a quote from Dr. Bruce Lipton in his book, The Biology of Belief. And I have this book right here behind me. I'll put it in the show notes so you guys can read it, because this book is amazing. I do give you a warning that some of it is pretty heavy in like the actual cell biology portion of it, like going into like the different parts of a cell. And I found myself having to reread parts of it because I was like, whoa, what did I just read? But I've been fascinated with the book because there's so many good concepts. If you can actually see, I have like 20 plus sticky notes in different areas, marking different parts of the pages that, of things that I want to talk about, because he's just has good point after good point with such good information. And he ties it in, the cell biology with like quantum physics and all these other parts of science that makes so much sense to put together. And when you start to put these together, it's the most amazing thing, because it actually opens up and makes complete and total sense. And the reason why so much of our scientists and mainstream narrative is not thinking this way is because they're so locked in, tunnel visioned on their own thing, and they're not thinking about, hey, we just learned about quantum physics. We just proved that quantum physics is real. They don't take those things into consideration. And so they're always thinking like in the Newtonian belief system, and they don't adapt to the new ways of thinking. And more scientists are starting to do that now because of Dr. Bruce Lipton. and some other scientists. But Dr. Bruce Lipton was talking about it for so long, and he got ridiculed, he got made fun of, he got called a quack. And that's unfortunately the way it is in a lot of our sciences. Once you start to bring up new things, they don't believe you. And even if you have the proof, they just say that's a fluke, that's a miracle, whatever. But his quote is that the cell membrane, which is I'm not sure if you remember from biology, the cell membrane was thought to be like a part of the cell that really didn't have much function other than just kind of protecting the cell. But the cell membrane itself is actually a programmable computer chip, and we ourselves are the programmers. What this means is really the cell membrane is what's taking in the information from the environment, from our beliefs, and is actually the part of the cell that is switching on or off the genes, and making it so that we're not subject to be victims of our genes, right? So that is amazing. And there was actually an Australian research consortium that was headed by B.A. Cornell, and they published an article into, I think it was Nature, which is like a book or something like that. The book, the biology of belief, actually didn't mention what Nature was, so forgive me for not knowing that. But that was back in 1997, and what they proved was that the cell membrane not only looks like a computer chip, but it functions like one. Like they were able to use like a piece of gold sheeting and attach it to it and make it function exactly like a computer chip. Isn't that amazing? And I think that's so fascinating, because once you start to understand that it functions like a computer chip and that's actually programmable, then it makes you realize that we have the ability, like I've talked about this before at the beginning of the episode, we have the ability to program and change our programming. We're not stuck to get cancer. We're not stuck to get obesity. We're not stuck to get depression or chances of heart attacks or diabetes or alcoholism. One second, there's a dog barking. So, we have the ability to change our lives and to we're not stuck into one set path of, oh, you're gonna get obesity, you're gonna be obese, you're gonna be depressed, you're gonna get cancer, you're gonna have a high risk of getting a heart attack and very likely gonna get one. You're gonna get diabetes, you're gonna have alcoholism. When we're told those things, it can actually have a major effect on our mind. And I think it's awesome that that the cells can be programmed. And then you think about it, something I always talk about in my other podcast, and if you've heard my other podcast, you've probably heard this, is that we can program our subconscious minds as well. And our subconscious mind is like a supercomputer that is taking information from all different aspects. And actually, at the beginning of this podcast, I talked about the subconscious mind, right? This is part of the mind that kids, that's hyperactive for kids, and it's constantly learning and trying to fit in and trying to adapt. And its main job is to keep us alive. So the fact that we're all alive, that you're listening to this right now, that means it's done its job. Congratulations. It's a great, loving part of the mind that does its best to help us, but doesn't really understand the difference between good and bad. It just takes in what data it takes in, and the way it's programmed is the way it's going to behave. So just like the subconscious mind, doesn't know the difference between good and bad. It can't reject information. The same thing as your cells. So that means if your parents, ate a certain way, if your parents, drank certain kinds of alcohol or sodas, or they always abused themselves in different ways. They got in a lot of fights. It was a very toxic relationship. It was a very negative, chaotic energy in your household. Then that's going to have an effect on your genes, and you're going to switch on certain kinds of genes. And your subconscious mind is actually going to be drawn to those things as well. So oftentimes you're going to keep that same kind of cycle, that you're going to be searching for that same chaotic energy that your childhood had, farther into the future. And this is what a lot of self-sabotage is that this part of the mind, we had those programs, those beliefs built into us. And the good news is that it's reprogrammable. We are the programmers, and we have the ability to go in and delete those previous programs and then put in new programs, install new programs. Like imagine like you go on your computer, right? And you can go to add or remove programs. You can go remove some programs. You can remove the Word, you can remove the Adobe, you can remove the things you don't need. So you can go and remove like unhealthy eating. You can go ahead and remove like addiction. You can go ahead and remove, negative thinking. You can remove those things, and you can start to implant things like healthy eating. You can start to implant things like positive thinking. You can start to implant different things like that. And the cool thing is that when you start to do it for yourselves, you're also doing it for your subconscious mind, because a lot of it works the same way. Um, and I'm actually a big believer that this is going to be effective, much more effective. You start to reprogram your subconscious mind. The rest of your cells are going to follow along, because your subconscious mind is like the supercomputer that's sending out signals to all your cells as well. So I think that's a big change. And if you're giving yourself the right kind of environment, the right kind of beliefs, then your life is going to change. Your health is going to change. You're going to start taking back your life and your health. So that brings me to the next step. How do we know that this works? If you change your beliefs. So like, yes, the environment, that makes sense, right? Because cells react to the environment. But why do beliefs actually change the way your cells operate? Do beliefs and like the things that you say to yourself actually affect your subconscious mind and your body overall and your health? Well, have you one example of this, and I'll talk more about it as well, from a quantum physics perspective, but placebo effect. Have you guys ever heard of the placebo effect? That's where someone believes they're getting like a certain kind of like miracle pill, and instead they're just getting a sugar pill, and they're getting the same results as the people who have that kind of pill, right? So their symptoms are clearing up, even though they're not taking the exact same thing as someone else. I mean, there's so many examples of this throughout history. You can just go type in like placebo effects, examples of placebo effects, and you'll find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And they're always marked as, a fluke, something that doesn't actually pertain to science at all. But you have to think about, why would this be written off? Well, and it's going to be something that's not going to be the easiest to take if you're in the belief that the government and the scientists are there to actually increase your health and be your best friend, and always looking out for you. Because unfortunately a lot of it is corrupt. A lot of the scientists, a lot of the politicians, and the government agencies are bought and paid for by things like big pharma, and other corporations that really don't have our best interest at heart, right? Their main goal is to keep us customers for a long period of time. And if you heal everyone, if you teach people that they can actually change their health just by changing their thoughts and using their mind to think a certain way, well, then you can't make money off of them with pills. You can't make money off them with injections. You can't make money off them with surgeries and all those kinds of things, because they have the ability to actually change their life with just their thoughts alone. And that's really what the placebo effect is. If you believe something is going to happen, that you have, like, this is the magic cure all, and you're doing it and you really believe it, and you let your body start to feel it, and you're like, oh man, I'm taking it, it's working. And then it actually it will actually work in a lot of instances, unless you're actually counteracting that belief. And that's really what the placebo effect is. It's proof that our mind actually can alter our health, can alter so many different things, right? And there's actually, reminds me of a study where they had two groups of people. One group of people were working out, right, every day, and they were measuring their muscle mass. Another group of people were actually just imagining themselves work out. And what they found is the people who were just imagining themselves working out gained almost the same amount of muscle as the people who were working out, because they actually saw it in their mind. They believed it. And that's how powerful our minds are, is really that we can change our life and our health and our bodies with our minds alone. And then there's the opposite side of it called the nocebo effect. You probably haven't, maybe you haven't heard the nocebo effect, but the nocebo effect is, you can just imagine it as like the opposite of the placebo effect. The placebo effect is good things usually. The nocebo effect is when people like doctors tell someone they only have 6 months left to live, and then they actually die because of that. So there's this example back when they thought a certain kind of throat cancer was 100% like 100% death rate. There was this doctor who prescribed, or sorry, misdiagnosed a patient with this kinds of throat cancer, and he told him he only had 6 months left to live, and he ended up dying in 6 months. And when they did the biopsy, they found out he didn't even have that kind of throat cancer, meaning that his belief that he was going to die actually drew him to die. So if you are in that situation where you are, if someone has told you only have so long to live, if someone has told you that, this is going to shorten your lifespan, don't believe them, because what you believe in your mind will become true. That's how powerful our minds are. And so that ties it. Now I'm going to tie it back to quantum physics, because that's what this book also talks about. So the biology of belief talks about quantum physics, epigenetics, all different kinds of things, right? I've also read his other book called The Honeymoon Effects, which talks about quantum physics as well. And what you need to know about quantum physics, I'm not going to get super in depth with it because it can be pretty intense. All you need to know is that for the longest time, scientists believed that we were just made of atoms. Everything and everyone is made up of atoms. But what they discovered is that there's actually particles below atoms that make up atoms. And that's what they call quantum particles. And these quantum particles are really just energy, little energy vortexes like tornadoes. And so what that means is everything is made up of energy. And that is how things communicate. That's how things are created. That's how things are perceived. So the idea is that when you say something, you are actually creating something, because that becomes energy itself. So right now when I'm speaking, I'm actually creating, manifesting into the world these thoughts. And the cool thing is words are very powerful. I've done a whole podcast about the power of words, but what are words? They're just frequency and energy. But the cool thing is that they actually have meaning, and someone can learn from those words, and they can actually change their life. And that's my hope for a lot of, if you are listening to this and you think you are, or you had the belief before, maybe we talked and you maybe started to think differently, that your genes defined you. Well, I hope you take this away from that. You are not powerless to your genes. You have the ability to change your life. You have the ability to change your life in so many ways. You can stop self-sabotaging. You can start to take back your life, and you can start to move towards a better life where you're not stuck going towards cancer. You're not stuck being obese. You're not stuck with depression. You're not stuck with like high chances of heart attacks. You're not stuck with diabetes, with alcoholism. So I want to talk about some solutions right now, because I think we've talked about pretty much all the things. So I'm going to talk about some things like, how can we make a better environment for ourselves? How can we start to program ourselves, in a better way? So let's talk about first the environment. Well, there's some things I think you should start to consider is that there's a lot of toxic things in most people's environments. And it's by design of the system. Unfortunately, the system, the way it is right now, like I talked about, there's a lot of corruption, and there's a lot of toxic products, whether it be food, drinks, things like deodorants, toothpaste, things like body washes, things like colognes, perfumes, things like hand sanitizers, like lotions, soaps, all these things. There's so many versions of these that are toxic for our bodies, and that is part of the environment. So one step you should be doing is, and if you don't do this already, I highly urge you to, is to always do some research before you buy a product. Look into see what's in that product you're buying and really understand, is it going to be healthy for you? Right, if you don't know what an ingredient is, look it up. Look at the common side effects of that ingredient. Look to see if there's any lawsuits over that ingredient. Look to see if there's any science that shows that it's going to be harmful to your body. Because for a lot of these ingredients in these things like fluoride that's added to toothpaste, things that your dentist puts in a lot of your teeth treatments, things that fluoride's added to a lot of city waters. That means it's in your drinking water. It's in your shower water and your bathing water and the water you wash your hands with. There's aluminum, added into things like deodorant. There's a lot of heavy metals in different places. People cook with aluminum foil, right? There's aluminum in injections, right? A lot of people don't understand really what's the ingredients in the injections they're putting into their body. And there's a lot of poisonous, toxic ingredients in those injections, like mercury, which is, a form of mercury, which is thimerosal. There is formaldehyde. There is just a lot of things you really wouldn't want to put in your body. And I highly recommend you start to look in, do the research. Ignorance is not bliss. What you don't know can hurt you. And unfortunately, it is hurting the majority of our population, because I want you to think about this. Even though we're the most advanced, even though we have the best refrigeration, even though we have the most access to different kinds of foods right now than we've ever had in history, we also have some of the highest rates of disease, depression, anxiety, heart attacks, diabetes, alcoholism, addiction, cancer. All these things are skyrocketing right now, despite the fact that we are so advanced. So what's going on? Well, the thing is most of our environments are full of crap. The food is sprayed with pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides, like things like glyphosate, Roundup. If you haven't heard about that, look it up. It's still being sold in the store, still being sold in the stores, it's still on the shelves. People are still using it, despite the fact that it's been proven to cause cancer in so many ways. You are what you eat. If you're putting these toxic things in your body, you are poisoning yourself, and you are setting up your cells to switch on those, cancer genes, to switch on those obesity genes, to switch on those depression genes, to switch on the heart attack genes, to switch on the diabetes, to switch on the alcoholism. You are choosing that for yourself. And that's really what I think a lot of people feel uncomfortable is. One, they don't want to believe that, the government is there, is not really working in their best interest right now. They don't want to believe that the majority of, science and things like that are really not working in our best interest. I really don't think all scientists or all government politicians are evil, but the way the system's set up is in a way to disempower us. And unfortunately, there is a lot of evil people, I believe, working within these sectors, and either they're ignorant or they know what's going on and they're allowing it to happen, which is, both are pretty bad. Because if you're in these kinds of things, you should be doing your best service to help others. If you are in government, if you are in politics, if you are a person who's looking after the health of other people, like a scientist, a doctor, something like that, then you need to be doing this research. The fact that this information has been out there for so long and somehow it's not been taken into account, it's been ignored, it's been called like quackery, it's been called flawed science, is completely and totally frustrating, because so many people are getting hurt, so many people are dying, so many people are losing loved ones and having a low quality of life, when really they can be changing their life very quickly if we started to put some of these ideas into play. So start to look at the things you're putting into your body. If you want to start someplace easily, start avoiding the processed foods. Start to choose more organic options. If you can't afford all organic, at least look at the Dirty Dozen. Look it up, called the Dirty Dozen. Certain foods or like vegetables and things like that that are more highly like they absorb the pesticides and herbicides and fungicides more. Obviously, you don't want to put any of that in your body, but if you can't afford it all, then just do your best. Stop, poisoning yourself. Stop sedating yourself all the time with alcohol and things like that, because that can actually change your gene expression as well. And start to take back your life. Start to take back your life. Start to put things, good things into your body, and start filtering your water. Start to get good night's sleep. Start to, make sure you're not spraying all these kind of aerosols and like toxic candles and um, doing things that really are not healthy for you. Look into each and everything that you do and consider, is this going to make myself better? Is it going to make myself healthier? Or is this going to be setting myself up for success, for disease, for cancer, for obesity, for depression, for higher chance of heart attacks, for these sorts of things, right? And start to change your thinking. And this is how we can start to reprogram ourselves. So there's a couple ways you can reprogram yourselves. And I'll just go over it kind of quick because I've talked about in my other videos. Start to change the way you're thinking. And you can do this by things like affirmations. You can start to do things like vision boards. You can start to do things like writing sticky notes certain places with certain phrases so that you're seeing those things over and over again, right? Because repetition is one of the ways that we can start to reprogram ourselves. There's a reason why people in school, why we were taught in school that we can learn through repetition, because this part of our mind, the subconscious mind, learns through repetition. And so the more you start to put these kind of good things into your environment, the better chance you have to switch off those nasty genes, switch on the good genes, and start to take back your health. And then you'll be using your mind power, the placebo effect, to actually start, creating and actually manifesting a better life for yourself. You can use hypnosis. Things like hypnosis is all, and there's a big misunderstanding for what a lot of hypnosis is, because a lot of people just think hypnosis is just, I'm going to hypnotize you and you're cluck like a chicken, dance around on stage, right? But that's not really, sure, there's a part of it that's like that, but you can also use hypnosis for good. You can use hypnosis to reprogram your subconscious mind, because all hypnosis is activating your mind and changing your brainwave state into a theta state. And that's the theta state that I talked about at the very beginning, where children are in between the ages of 1 and 7, and when they're highly susceptible to learning. So when you activate this brainwave state, and really what all it is kind of getting you into a confused like state, getting into a relaxed like state, getting you into a spot where your conscious mind is taken offline, and your subconscious mind is becoming the forefront. So you can kind of think of these two parts of your mind as like bodyguards. Your conscious mind is bodyguard number 1. When he gets confused, when he gets sleepy, subconscious mind, second bodyguard, comes into place. And so the subconscious mind, remember, its main goal is just to keep you safe, is to just follow along with society. And that's the best way it knows how to keep safe. And it follows this by its programs, by its data it's captured. So you can start to change that data. You start to delete those certain data pieces, and start to delete the programs so that it starts to run better programs for you. Because it's really like a record player where it has, certain set of information on the record, and it'll keep playing it over and over. That's why, like, when people try to start eating healthier, they'll go back to the sweets because the record is still playing, right? That those thoughts, those urges, those cravings keep coming back up, which is people know as self-sabotage, and then they go back and they eat that food again. But we are not subject, and we're not stuck to these things. We're not victims of these things unless we allow ourselves to be. We can take our power back. We can reprogram ourselves. We can change our environment. We can change the things that we can change our beliefs, and we can start to make a better future. And this is really what I hope that all of you guys can do, is to start to reprogram yourself, start to take back your environment, and start to change your beliefs. And if you need help with it, don't hesitate to reach out. We can hop on a Zoom call and we can talk more about where you're needing help, and what options that we have available. So, and make sure to check out my other videos because I share so much of this information just for free on the internet. And there's so much information being shared by countless of people. And this information about like self-sabotage, about epigenetics, about genes is exploding right now. So many people are starting to find this information, and I love that because it's it's allowing us, the population, to take our power back, to stop being a victim, and to start, you know, creating something better for ourselves, and therefore our kids, and therefore their kids. And it will be a continuous effect because just like these negative thoughts, these negative beliefs, these negative environments, these genes can be handed down from generation to generation. We can hand down good things from generation to generation, and we can make that a new chain, and a much better chain. And that's really what I want. That's my main goal for my son, and that's my main goal for my son's, family when he has kids as well. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did like it, please give it a like. Please give it a subscribe. Please comment. Please share it as much as you can. All these things help boost the algorithm so that other people can find this information. And they also they help me as well because I would prefer much to be making all these videos more often for you guys. And any support does help. So I really appreciate it all. I'll have links to contact me down below, to the books I was mentioning. I'll have actually, I'm going to mention another book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy by Paul Chek. If you are trying to change your health, a great place to start is to get that book. You can learn so much about your health in such a small amount of time. It's actually one of the main requirements for one of the courses I did for a holistic lifestyle practitioner course with the Chek Institute. With Paul Chek is actually the person who created it, and it's a fantastic book. You can learn so much. I promise you, if you get that book, you will really enjoy it. And really start to take back your health. And there's so many ways you can do that. If you're looking for specific products, I actually run an organic superfoods company. So if you're looking for a way to get organic superfood products delivered directly to your door, don't hesitate to reach out to me because I can get those to you at a 25% discount. And if you end up liking the products a lot, we can talk more about you potentially becoming part of the business and providing that food for other people as well. Because now that you know that your environment changes your life, if you start to provide people with healthy food, healthy alternatives, you can literally change their lives. You can change their literal cell structures, and that is amazing. So give yourself the gift of health, give others the gift of health, give yourself the gift of power, take back your power, and destroy that belief that your genes define you, because now you know that your genes very well do not define you. You are not a victim of your genes. You have the ability to change your life, to change your health, to change yourself in all ways. And I really love you all, and I send my positive energy out to you with the words that I'm speaking and with my beliefs and my energy now. So I hope you all receive it well, and thank you for listening.